Welcome to the third part of this trilogy.
You say trilogy and that automatically makes me think of one thing.
Yeah.
All right. So this next part, we're going to talk about the movies that we studied. We see all our piles of books here.
Our literature.
This is our homework. Everything pretty much that we learned from either watching behind the scenes from the films that we mentioned earlier or studying the books. Because a lot of the new films, they have the art of books.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Kubo and the Two Strings one. They also have a Paranorman one.
Mm-hmm.
So these actually, they don't describe everything too much in depth, but there's a lot of pictures, which is great. So you can kind of see their setup, see how they build their rigs, see what kind of lights they use on set, kind of the scale of their sets also, which is helpful. A lot of their green screening. Yeah, a lot of their props. They got a lot of good behind the scenes pictures that you don't normally see in the short segments.
Mm-hmm.
So another one, a really good one, is Stop Motion Magazine. And it's more than just a magazine. It's run by John Ikuma. He's a stop motion animator. He's done a lot of commercial work. And he's got on his site, he has a lot of tutorials. He goes in depth at using Dragon Frame in some of them, talks about rigging and other kinds of stop motion techniques and everything. So definitely check out his site. What else? Yeah. There's some specific... Oh, we have the Nightmare Before Christmas one. This was a used one. I don't know if you can find this one anymore. But this one has a lot of behind the scenes about writing the story. And then the last chapter or last section of the book talks about the puppets and the animation. And you see a lot of the sets that they used. And most of these you've never seen before because it's an older movie, so the behind the scenes don't really cover that much. So you see a lot of the behind the scenes of making the sets and everything. I would say when you're starting out, what's the best one to look at? The Target one. I'd say Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, Nightmare Before Christmas is good.
Yeah.
If you want something a little more modern, I would say look at this one.
Yes.
About Coraline. This is the Advanced Art of Stop Motion Animation by Ken A. Priebe.
Priebe, yeah. Mm-hmm.
This one is good, I think, because, like I said, it's a little more modern, so they go into the technique of, what do you call it, face changing?
Replacement animation for faces.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that's when you have a sculpt of a mask. It looks like a mask pretty much, and then you take off the face of the character, switch it out for the next one. And it has different eye expressions or eyebrow expressions, different mouth shapes and everything.
Yeah, and then like lip syncing.
Yeah.
The audio. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah.
But, yeah, lip syncing the character's lips to the audio, the pre-recorded audio.
Yeah. So that book kind of goes over everything from rigging, making puppets, different ways of making puppets, including like how to mold them and what ingredients to use. Mm-hmm. It also. Yeah, like Landon said, goes over the replacement animation.
Yeah.
So that one takes you more through the process, which is great.
Yeah, and then you can also see more of the camera rigs in this one too. I think this one's a good one to start with because this was Leica, right?
Yeah, that
Henry
was
Selick.
They just used the Coraline picture though. That's not.
Oh, okay.
It's not exactly made by them.
But the forward is by Henry Selick, the guy, the
director of Nightmare Before. Director of both.
Yeah.
Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline. Oh, and James and the Giant Peach.
Yeah.
Which
so
has
this
the stop
one,
motion part.
Yeah, this one is all basically practical.
Yeah.
Practical effects that you can do in the real world without having to go into computer and do CGI.
Yeah.
Which a lot of stuff like what Leica is into now, they're more of a hybrid studio where they combine CGI and stop motion to try and marry the two worlds, which they do a really good job of.
Yeah.
But for someone who wants more of a tangible experience or something if you're doing a DIY at home or something, that's not exactly, might not be in your reach. I mean, it's not in ours.
Yeah, they use a lot of different departments, and that's something like a big studio like that can do. But for individual animators, I would say Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline even James and the Giant Peach and the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer ones, those are good examples of something that you can actually, a goal you can actually get to of what your animation can look like. Even though they're a professional level studio, you can still see little hiccups in their animation, so it's not really as refined as Leica is now. So it's something that with a lot of practice, you can definitely achieve the same look as Nightmare Before Christmas as far as quality of animation. Because that was as basic as it gets. It's just camera. They had a couple motion control rigs connected to early computers. But yeah, just camera and then the puppet. I don't even think they didn't have anything where they could see the frame that they just took either. So they were kind of animating blind pretty much, hoping that it worked out after you get the film developed and everything. So yeah, that's definitely attainable. So what else? Oh, then the other thing, there's this other book, Stop Motion. One? Yeah, this one's more of making the puppets, which is great. But aside from actual stop motion ones, if you're studying stop motion animation, a good principle or a good place to start is the Animator Survival Kit. Even though this is focused on 2D animation, a lot of the same principles apply to stop motion, and this is a really great place to start because it can be a little daunting to think in terms of a 3D puppet of how you want to move it and everything, because you have way more variables moving it in space, X, Y, and Z axis. But when you're dealing with a drawing and animation, it's a little bit easier to understand the principles and then later take those and apply them to stop motion and see how they translate.
Yeah, like, isn't that where you got the arcs
Yeah,
from?
That's where I got the following the arcs concept. It's from 2D animation. I mean, everybody uses it in stop motion too, but that's where it comes from. So, especially in 2D where you're actually drawing each frame, you have to follow the arc, and sometimes they even trace out the arc and what's it called?
Onion skin?
No, where they
guidelines?
No, what's it called where you keyframe, but you have them you set the keyframes apart so that you know how many cells are in between. I guess keyframing. Yeah, it's keyframing. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Yeah, so this was a good book. This goes over the basics of just straightforward animation, 2D animation, all the principles of animation, the ones that are set by the 9 old men that Disney created. Yeah. Which pretty much all animation follows now. But another one, this is more of a specialty one, The Illusion of Life, Disney animation by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. This one is kind of like the Animator Survival Kit, but it's focused on the Disney movies, obviously. You get a behind-the-scenes look at how they did the Pinocchio and Snow White and the early animated movies. But still, the principles are all the same, so definitely look at those. Other than that, you just gotta do it, really.
Trial by fire?
Yeah. Okay, so a good way to start getting into stop motion animation is to use figures that are already available. We already talked a little bit about the Stickybones characters. They're built for stop motion and artists because they're specifically sculpted to get the widest range of motion. So they can recreate a lot of human poses that we can create, but most figures that you find in the store can't really create. And it's also kind of an evolution of the artist's wooden doll figure. Yeah, where people would pose the doll to help them with framing and also perspective. So this takes that 10 steps further. We really recommend it though, because all the joints are configured specifically with stop motion in mind. So like the head is a little bit easier to move than the legs would be, so that you can get that detailed motion in the head without having to upset the whole puppet while you're doing it. So it's specifically calibrated for that kind of practice.
Yeah, another popular form, especially with YouTube animators, is stop motion with action figures. So one example is that we worked with Mason Drum, who's an animator, and his YouTube channel is Making Things with Cameras. And for the holidays, he signed us on to do the music for his Iron Giant holiday special. And he used this action figure from Mondo. And this is from Mondo's Mecha line of highly articulated robot figures. So they're planning on to come out with more characters like this, more action figures that are as opposable as this one.
So as you saw in the short clip that we showed of the special, even though that this is a toy figure, his extra range of motion, the highly articulated part that they like to market, it actually lends itself pretty well to stop motion because you get different head movements. And also the puppet comes with a whole bunch of different parts that you can swap out, like 6 pairs of hands it comes with that have all different poses. So if you want to show him pointing at something or holding something or clasp fist, you can swap those out. They just pop out and then you pop the new one in.
Or here we have his typical thumbs up.
Yeah. It's pretty common in stop motion where you swap out a piece of the puppet to get a different range of motion. Usually it's seen with heads a lot, especially with Leica's film, because they 3D print their faces, so they can pop off the different faces and give you different expressions and also a more finer movement of speaking, especially with the lip sync. So that's not uncommon, and in stop motion we call it replacement animation. You can even see it, as we mentioned before, or as early as Nightmare Before Christmas, where Jack Skellington, the main character, they had hundreds of different head sculpts for him. So depending on what they needed him to say, different mouth shapes, they would pop one off, pop it back in, take the picture, pop it off, do the next one, take a picture. And then when you add in even the eyelids closing, that gives you a whole nother level of articulation that you can customize with the different mouth shapes. But what's great about toy figures and using toys is a lot of times they come with extra pieces, like extra things to hold, or in this case, the Iron Giant, he has his laser gun that you can pull his normal arm off and pop back in. This one comes with the Hogarth car that he throws around like a rocket. As we said, it comes with the different replacement hands, which are great. But the heads on this one are actually pretty special because they have the teeth that pop in and out also. So depending on, then they fit with any of the heads. So you can pop the teeth in and out. If you wanted to show him using his teeth, like he's chewing something. Because if you remember in the actual animated film, sometimes you saw his teeth and sometimes you didn't. It was kind of up to the robot when he showed his teeth. I don't know how that worked, but you can get that extra range of believability in the figure, and that's something that comes great with toy figures, is all the customizable parts that you can interchange. But his teeth look... His little teeth like this, they pop out of the bottom jaw and the top jaw.
Oh, and the Superman plate.
logo. So that one just pops on by magnets, which is pretty cool.
Magnets.
Yeah, how about that?
Superman.
Yeah, so this is actually a really great figure, and it demonstrates really well that you can use action figures and toy collectibles for stop motion also. The only tricky thing with these are you have to figure out a way to rig it, number one, and number two, sometimes if it's a toy, the joints might get finicky after a while of animating, so they might not perform the same throughout your whole animation. But it's still a great way to get started and something we highly recommend, because if you saw in the holiday special, you can still get a really cool performance out of most of these toy figures. Kind of like our Red Riding Hood doll is also based on a toy figure, and then we costumed it. And as you can see, it worked pretty well for us. So that's a great way to start. So a couple other final thoughts, other tips. These are really good ones. When you're first starting a shot, don't be afraid to move the puppet. It's a little intimidating because you don't want to mess it up, obviously. but you just have to kind of go for it and move. Don't be afraid to move more than one appendage at a time, unless the action calls for it. Because even the subtle moves, like if the main focus is on the head, like the head's looking down at you, the shoulders might even kind of relax a little bit, or they might tense up or something. So there's always going to be a little bit of move in other areas also, not just the main focus. So the more of that you can do, even if it's small movements, is going to bring more life to the character. But yeah, you can't be afraid to move more than one thing. When you're first starting the shot, if you are a little timid and don't want to mess it up, I have a trick to do with that too. Say, like for the demo I did earlier, if you move the head down, so say I'm moving the head down, right? Mm-hmm. And I know like his arm is gonna start to come out, or he might even start shifting weight from the one leg that he's resting on onto the other leg. So do it in increments. Move the head down first. So heads up, move the head down, take the picture. Once you're happy with the movement of the head, then go on to the arm, because you can always delete frames. So you'll delete the one that doesn't have both actions in it. So then you move the arm. Yeah. And then once you get the arm set, now you have both movements in there. You have the head that you just made sure was good,
which you're going to delete later.
Yeah, the one by itself.
Yeah.
And then you have the arm movement. So now you have both actions. So then just keep stacking the actions. This is all for one frame of footage, right? So you're just going to keep building the actions just to kind of get you rolling and to get you comfortable with moving the puppet. And so you're not really afraid of the puppet. Like if I move it too much, or if I do too much, I'm not going to be able to get it back in the spot and undo it, which is a big problem with stop motion. But this is one way around it to kind of just get your feet wet and get you going to help build up confidence. So yeah, after the arm, then kind of start to shift the weight a little bit, like that. And then boom, now you have three movements in there. And if you want to add some of the fingers moving or something like that, or relaxing the shoulders a little bit, you can do that and just build your shot like that. After you're happy with that, there's your one frame. Move on to the next, do the same thing, head, arm, and try to keep the same sequence. Do the head, do it in the same order that you did it. The head, the arm, shift the weight a little bit, relax your shoulders or fingers or whatever else you did to bring a little bit of magic. And then, so do it that way. And then after, 5-10 shots or whatever, you'll kind of get a hang for it and you'll be able to tell, okay, if I move it like this much, I know I'm good. This is too much. You'll get a better sense of the range of motion that you're trying to do and how far you have to move the puppet to get that action that you want. And then at that point, then you can just do it all at once. Move the head, the arm, without doing your in-between shots to make sure it all looks good. Mm-hmm. And then after that, you're pretty much off. The other tip, last one, this is more of an advanced one. This kind of goes against the last tip that I just gave. But that one's for beginning, to help you get your feet wet, right? What I like to do is, once I have a good handle on what the motion is, like for the one where I just did, where he was reaching out and he's dancing with the pencil. Towards the end of that, I started to do that all in one. I use both hands to move the puppet, right? So I'm all at once. I'm trying to shift his weight and move his arm out, right? So I'm trying to do it like a natural, how you would normally do it. You would move everything all at once, right? To me, if you can do it all at once and kind of get your both hands around the puppet to get the action, especially when you're shifting weight, that's a good one. Move the whole puppet, yeah? And then move both arms out. Because then you're thinking more like, how would I actually do this if I was moving? You're not going to move one thing and then the other, right? You're going to try to do both at the same time. And to me, whenever I do that, my final animation always looks more real, more natural, because that's how you would do it. You would move, everything at once. Whenever you're walking, you're talking, all the things are moving at once, right? You're not doing like, oh, I'm going to move my arm. Oh, now my other arm. Oh, now I'm talking. So as much as you can, focus on like the lower half of the body, moving both legs at once. And then focus on the arms, moving both legs at once. And then the head by itself. Just because it's at the top. That's kind of the more advanced one. Because that one you can definitely mess up. But your animation is a little bit more believable, in my opinion. At least just from what I've done. Mm-hmm. So those are some more advanced tips coming off of the animation demo that we did in the last part. So keep those in mind. Just look at reference, look at real life, act it out, see how you would do something.
Yeah, you can act it out. And
sometimes I film Landon doing something. I'm like, can you just drink a cup of water for me?
Yeah,
I'm going to film you real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've heard 2D animators also do that a lot.
Everybody does that.
2D, CG.
Yeah.
That's pretty common.
Yeah, because you want to act. You're putting yourself acting into the puppet.
Right.
So you always want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and it helps get the puppet's moves a little more natural.
Mm-hmm. Because then if you put that footage in the sequencer, the like drag and frame, whatever you're using, you can go frame by frame and see, oh, my arm really is moving a lot. And my eye doesn't think that's weird. So if I do that on the puppet, it should be fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is usually the case. If it does look weird, then maybe you're not following your arc in the right way, or you're ending up with like arm goes down and out or something, and you're making like a L bracket, like a, I don't know, a Tetris block. Yeah. But instead of going straight through it. Because you'd be surprised how far you can move the puppet between frames. Like you can jump pretty big distances and still the eye will catch it, as long as you're following those arcs. So arcs are important. Is that my final word? I guess. Yeah. Anything else?
No, we pretty much covered everything in these 3 videos.
Yeah.
And at least enough for you to get started and do a dive into your own stop motion animation.
Yeah, it was a pleasure sharing our behind the scenes and kind of how we work a little bit, how we do stop motion, and a little bit about our project. So yeah, thanks again.
I hope you enjoyed.
And thank you to Kessler for letting us share this with their audience.
Yes. Thank you.
Go out and animate now. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.